Welcome back, everybody. I haven't done one of these videos in a while, something that's intended for discussion and a little more conversation in the comments. And I know this isn't the most thought-provoking topic, what is retro and what is modern, but it has been a problem for me for the last couple of months at least. Somebody in one of my comments had asked, can you do a video on your preferred retro or modern games? Which one do you prefer? And I thought that's a pretty good idea, except I don't exactly know how to define retro gaming. In my mind, for the longest time, I had the cutoff at the NES. I grew up with the Nintendo consoles, and the NES was clearly so different to me than the N64, which is the next console I had, that growing up and aging, that's where I always had the division. Now, when I talk to other people, they make their cutoffs in 2010s. Some people make their cutoffs in the mid-2000s. That one makes sense to me too, with like the GameCube era. What other consoles did we have then? Xbox, Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, right? But I'm just not really sure. So I did a little bit of light research, not too much, and I just looked it up online. What is retro, for starters? And Google, wherever it pulled its definition from, probably Merriam or something, the recent past. I'm thinking recent past. That could be 5 years ago. That doesn't exactly help me with figuring this out. And I looked at other aspects of our culture. I looked at some film and television. I looked at fashion, and those weren't exactly that helpful either. With movies, I saw that some people were including early 2000s movies as retro. A lot of people had older movies than that, but clearly what is retro is subjective, and there is variance across these different realms. And then with fashion, people are throwing in the word vintage. And I'm thinking, I don't know what vintage is or how that's different from retro. I always thought they were interchangeable. People are pulling up the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 80s for retro inspired. And that's something that we have in gaming too, right? Shovel Knight is a retro inspired game based on what? A lot of the NES appeal, right? I see that with that game. Okay, so NES, that's for sure retro in most people's eyes. But now we have the influx of 16-bit style graphics, and that is retro. So, okay, maybe the SNES era, that's also retro as well. It would probably help me if instead of dividing gaming into just two spheres or two different timelines, we could have a few more eras, a few more epochs, and rather than just generations, because I can't remember what the first generation is. I can't remember the second generation. Again, in my mind, something like the Atari might be Gen 1, but there are consoles that came out before that. So maybe it would just be helpful to have a few more divisions or a few more ways of looking at this. Anyway, the question is for you guys, what exactly is retro? Where do you draw the line? What's the cutoff? It's a subjective answer. So go ahead and just chime in the comments answering what you think it is. And to make it a little more exciting, how about you mention your favorite retro game, your favorite modern game, and which one is better? If I have to give a more definitive answer to this question, I suppose I would park retro gaming as ending around the early or mid-90s. I really do think just using graphics as a determination point is a good way to do it. So the N64, which came out in the mid-90s, right? The Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1, those are all the beginnings of modern gaming. And even if a lot of people would disagree, just because you try to make somebody play an N64 game now, they're probably going to think it's so archaic. And if you look at what's being remade, you have a lot of those PlayStation 1 games like the Resident Evils, and those have to be modernized now. It's a fluid definition. It's something that keeps on changing, and we're going to have to change our definition as time passes. I get that. That's just what I thought. And this is all kind of relevant because at some point in the future, yes, I would like to make some videos on retro versus modern and what games I prefer, what games I enjoy talking about, whatever. Anyways, that's all for now. I just wanted this to be short and just make it a little more of a fun video where we can all throw our definitions in the comments. Like I said, if you have some games that you want to pop in there, your favorite retro titles, your favorite modern titles, I'd love to hear about those as well. And hopefully, if we can find some sort of consensus on this topic, maybe in the future I'll make a video on my preferred games. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.